Hello, I'm Brian Lucarelli, Director of our Private Client Services Group and co-chair of our Family Offices team at Foley and Lardner. And today I'm here with Ruben Diaz, Managing Partner of our Miami office, who focuses his practice on representing large and primarily family-owned businesses in Latin America. Welcome, Ruben.
Thank you for having me, and pleasure to be here with you.
Great. And today we're going to go discuss inbound investing and top-of-mind issues that arise when helping clients through the process of investing into the U.S. from Latin American countries. But Ruben, before we get started, would you mind sharing a little bit of your professional background with our audience, and then we'll jump right into the questions.
Yes, I am a recent addition to the Foley office in Miami. I joined the firm about 9 months ago as a partner. I have been in this practice space for many years. When I graduated from law school, I started my career in New York and then moved to Miami, always working in the private wealth and closely held business world. So my clients have I've almost always been number one, Latin American, number two, large businesses, and number three, businesses that are owned by small groups of people, either families or individuals. And after many years in the region, I worked in pretty much, well, I guess not pretty much, in every country in Latin America. Uh, the further north you go, the more clients I have. The further south you go, just the way history has worked out, that's the way it is. Uh, but yeah, that's my background.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I'm really excited about our topic today. So let's jump in with kind of question one. So, what are the most important pieces of information we require as a firm from our clients in order to help them properly structure their investments into the U.S.?
So the first thing is obviously is where are the clients from? What is the country of origin and what is the country of residence um, of the client and the client group? Each country in Latin America has its own rules. Some countries are worldwide taxation countries. Some countries have what we call territorial taxation countries, where the only local income is taxed, and the rules for investing in and through so-called tax haven entities vary from country to country. So that's that. The first thing is, where is the client from?
Okay.
Second is, okay, so now that we know where the client is from, if it's a family business, what are the residency and citizenship of those individuals? They may be of origin in a particular country, but where are they citizens and residents of today? And the reason for that is that Latin American families have transitioned. Some are exclusively Latin, some members of the family are US and some are Latin, and then some members of the family have over the years become US persons. So those US persons are US persons for tax purposes, and the way you plan for a US owner is very different from the way you plan for a non-resident alien owner. And when you have a mixed group, you'd have to be very careful to take that into account. I think the third is, what type of investment is the family making, or is the individual making? Is this a passive investment, of like a portfolio type investment in securities or in some other passive business, or is this an investment in an active business enterprise? Because those two also present kind of a decision point, and you take different roads.
Well,
And
good. Let's
if you and I think if it's an active business investment, um, what is that? How is that the U.S. business going to interact with the other side of the house, the business in the country of origin of the individual? So those are the key.
Good. Well, let's drill down on those a little bit more if I can. So, can you summarize? You talked about inbound investments in a business. Can you summarize how to handle the planning process for an inbound investment in a business?
Yeah. So the first question is, what type of entity should be established? Should it be a corporation? Should it be a limited partnership? Should it be a limited liability company? And you have to explain to the client the different alternatives and the levels of taxation that each one of those involves. A corporation has two levels of tax, at the corporate level and at the individual level. Limited liability companies and limited partnerships are flow-through entities, but involve the client in a trade or business in the United States. So we go through that process. in most cases in today's world, for an active business, a limited liability company owned by the foreign company of the client works well. And then the second key item, which I think I already mentioned as in the preliminary questions, is how is that new U.S. business investment going to interact with the foreign company that it is a part of as a group? Is it going to be buying goods and services from the home country? Is it going to be selling the goods and services of the home country in the United States for a commission? So those two are entity selection and then relationship between U.S. and the home country business, and there are decision points all along.
Got it. So then, how about the planning process of an inbound passive investment? A little different.
It is a little different. In the planning for a passive investment, often the key is estate and gift tax considerations. If the client is going to invest in the U.S. in a portfolio of securities or in some other business that is not active, the main consideration is how do we protect that U.S. investment situated in the U.S. from estate tax and gift tax in the U.S. U.S. persons have a very significant exemption from gift tax, and you don't pay gift tax or estate tax until you go above a very high level of wealth transfer. But for foreign persons, they're subject to estate tax above $60,000. So usually what we need to do is we need to establish an entity that blocks, if you will, the application of the tax. So usually a corporate entity is established between the foreign investor and the U.S. passive investment to ensure that that passive investment is not subject to estate tax. Because when the person dies, what is inherited is stock of a foreign corporation rather than the U.S. assets itself. And the other very important thing is to assist the client through the process of complying with U.S. anti-money laundering, know your customer laws. There are ideas that could be very effective on a theoretical level, but ideas that would present issues in terms of complying with bank regulatory requirements. When you have a passive investment, you establish a foreign company to invest in the U.S. That company is going to have to establish source of wealth, source of income, history of the individual, and that is in some sense practical, but it impacts the legal side very, very strongly. So that's and that becomes more complex every day. The compliance requirements. You may pick a jurisdiction for a foreign corporation that you think sounds fine. There are jurisdictions that are not acceptable to U.S. financial institutions. So you have to be very sensitive to that as well. And I guess lastly is you have to find a way for the client to be able to provide for the orderly disposition of those investments in the event of their death. So there's a lot of planning with offshore trusts, in some cases U.S. trusts, but you can't expect the investment to be made and a structure to be sitting there without asking the question and helping the client answer the question is what happens when those individuals are gone. And that planning is very, very important.
Got it. So lastly, I'm going to final question here. I'm going to kind of change the lens and look at it more from a client perspective. What are the most frequently asked questions from our clients coming into the U.S. of U?
The first thing is the planning, the orderly disposition planning, which I think I already mentioned. Often the planning from Latin America comes from a desire to protect assets from inheritance and from instability politically in the region. So the first question is, how do we protect these assets in the family context to make sure that the assets go to the intended recipients in the family organization? That's one very important item. The second item is, how do we ensure that that we as individuals don't get subject to tax ourselves personally for our participation in a U.S. investment, a U.S. business. So you're structuring the investment either passive or in the business, but you're making sure that the client himself is not involved in a trade or business and becomes a subject of U.S. taxation. The third item is, I think, there's a need to explain to clients structures that are not well known to them in the region. In Latin America, you live in civil law countries. So in a civil law country, it is difficult to understand exactly what a trust is and how a trust works. So you need to explain to the client the difference between a trust structure and a private foundation structure, which they may be used to, and how to gain confidence in the fact that the trustee is going to do what you expect the trustee to do. So a key component of the inbound planning is not just structuring the planning, but explaining to the client legal structures that they are not well familiar with in the region, because they don't exist in civil law countries. And the interplay of all of those, on the one hand, can be complex. On the other hand, very rewarding when I think you finish up and you say, we've done something that this is going to help this person in the long term, and the client himself recognizes that this makes a great deal of sense.
Well, Ruben, I want to thank you. This was just great information, clearly a very complex area of the law. And again, I want to thank you again for your insights. I want to thank all of you also for watching our presentation. For more information, please visit us at foley.com under Family Offices. Thank you.
And thank you very much for having me.